Hello and welcome to this new episode together with Samuel Path. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much, Svenia. My pleasure to be here.
Yes, it's also my pleasure because you're a dear friend of mine and I think your story is amazing. So I'm really happy to have you discover Sam's story. So Sam, you are a senior engineer working in AI. You're also a father of four. And so I'm very curious to know more about you, about your life, why you chose to work in AI. And afterwards, we will talk a bit more about parenting in the age of AI. So please introduce yourself and tell us why you chose to work in AI.
All right. I think when I was a child, I was kind of already a bit of a nerdy kid. I like to, yeah, see how computers work. And I remember, I come from a modest family, and we didn't have enough money to buy video games, and so I learned from an early age on to hack games to be able to play them for free on PC, on PlayStation, and so on. So when it came time to choose my major, for me it was obvious to choose computer science. So I studied computer science at university, and since then I've been working as a software engineer. And uh, and so around 3 years ago, like around the time when large language models, so LLMs, started to come around, I started to be very interested by that. So at first, there was a model called GPT-2 by OpenAI, and I remember on social media and everything in my circles, it was almost laughable because it was creating sentences with bad grammar and so on. And so I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know where this is going. But then GPT 3.5 came out with ChatGPT at the same time, and then I started for the first time to see that there could be some very interesting and useful tasks done by these models. And then it only increased exponentially since then. So I really started tinkering with them a lot to really try to grasp their strengths, their weaknesses, what we can do, what we can't do. And so in my current company, Shopify, I was working as a standard software engineer, but I was working in an area where accuracy and compliance is very important. I was working in payment. And so it was pretty hard to use these AI models. And so I started really tinkering on the side, building side projects in the evenings, in the weekends, to better understand that. My goal was to then apply to an AI team internally or external to another company. And uh, and as I started posting about these side projects in our internal tooling like Slack, the CEO actually, Toby Liedker, who's a very strong AI enthusiast, he saw how passionate I was, and he actually asked me to be transferred to an AI team. So this is how I got started.
Amazing. Well done. Well done. And so for our listeners who may not always be the techies, what are the biggest trends or shifts in AI that people should know about, that people should understand from someone who is working in AI and who knows and who follows the latest trends?
Yeah. Yeah, so actually, so my work as a software engineer is directly impacted by AI. So as soon as a new tool come out or new models come out, I try to adapt them in my work. So initially, 3 years ago, there was some tool which would allow to auto predict the next words when I was programming, or I could ask some programming questions and it would help me. But it was more or less basic tasks. And over time, the task that these AI models could help us do became more and more complex. So today, without exaggeration, sometimes we have some programming tasks that would have taken weeks, which can take a few hours, and others which could have taken months, which only take a few days by a single engineer. And actually, this may be one of the reasons why so many software companies like Meta, Google, Amazon are laying off thousands of workers because people can do more with less people. So I'm seeing firsthand how my work is being transformed by AI. And I think that software is only it's in the preview of what's coming for the other white collar jobs.
And what do you think about software engineers? We hear a lot of debates and we read a lot on LinkedIn around the fact that developers, software engineers, this craft, this job is dead and that people should not study it anymore. You won't be needing any of those anymore. What is your take on that? Is it going to disappear completely as a job?
So what I would say is that the job is not going to disappear, but it's going to be completely transformed. Even today, so for instance, I used to spend maybe half of my work time like actually coding. I do this less and less. more and more I'm telling AI models, oh, this is what I want, this is what I would like to do, and these are the constraints and so on. So I still need to really know the technical things behind it, and then I also have to verify the work created by AI. So today, these AI models are not good enough that you can just give them a task and they're autonomous, and you can be careless and be like, okay, the task is done. No, the humans with expertise still have to be behind to make sure that the work is maintainable, and it follows security practices and so on. So today it's more of like it's more like a collaboration between AI and humans. But over the months, I see that more and more tasks are being done by AI and less by humans. So we become more and more supervisors of work by AI. But to do a good work supervision, you still need some very, very strong skills. It's hard to know today which kind of skills will be required in 5, 10, 15 years. Even like for my own personal roadmap in my career, I struggle to know, okay, what skills are going to be really important for me in 5, 10. I mean, I'm 36. I still may have 30 more years to work. And it's very hard for me to predict which skills are relevant to maintain or develop. So I have to be very, very alert and following the trends.
So that there's a necessity, even at your age and later, to be in the lifelong learning mindset. You are a lifelong learner. You need to learn through your life, through your career, never stop learning. And I guess that's the same for all of us,
Oh, yeah.
whatever our jobs, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, actually, continual learning is almost, I would say it's almost existential in my career. Like the day I stop learning, I become obsolete and out of date in a few months, in a few weeks sometimes. I mean, I have some friends who took a year break, and it's sometimes even hard for them to get back into the industry because so much has changed. So yeah, so for me, I mean, obviously school at university is just the beginning. It's just getting the foundations and learning how to learn, but it's not an end in itself. I mean, yeah, I think most of the interesting jobs are jobs where one has to constantly stay up to date. I think there is no modern profession which is interesting where the body of knowledge is known and you can just rest on that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Coming back to coding, there is a whole wave, a trend called vibe coding, and apparently you can say to a software what kind of website you want, or and then it builds it for you without you having to have like some real technical skills. What is it exactly? Can you explain it to us, and what do you think about it?
Yeah, so actually these tools are pretty amazing and impressive. So even at Shopify, we have many non-coders who are able to build internal tools, which look nice, which are working. Actually, these vibe coding tools are pretty useful to create some simple software. But when you want to create professional grade software used at scale with reliability and compliance and durability and so on, this is where they kind of break down. So for me, they're pretty useful to build maybe some internal tools. Imagine you have some work that you do regularly and you're always like clicking around and copy and pasting this. You're like, oh, maybe I could create this vibe coded tool, which only is for me. So you can try to give the specification and a model is going to create this for you. And if you're the single user, it's fine if you don't really understand how it's working under the hood. Or if you are building an internal tool in a company, the stakes are pretty low. But if you want to create an actual software that you're going to sell, the expectations are going to be much higher. And we've seen many people who actually started building these sites or projects using vibe coding, and then they would have to hire a software engineer to actually understand what's going on. And usually today still, like, the code is so convoluted and so on that some software engineers come and have to rebuild everything from scratch. So I think they are pretty useful for the proof of concept stage, but they are not going to replace engineers per se. I mean, they're replacing some kind of engineers for like prototypes and so on, or for like simple websites.
Yeah.
But they're not going to put software engineers out of job now, at least.
Coming back to AI, because, I want to make sure we get the most out of you today. You are an AI engineer. You understand what's going on right now. So what to watch? I want to understand what are the key advancements in AI right now. For example, generative models, multimodal models, AI assistants, agents that you think will touch our everyday life in the next 1 to 3 years? What's going to be revolutionary for us in AI?
Yeah. So I think I'm seeing it today with my work. So AI systems are becoming better and better, and more and more better than humans at most intellectual tasks. So many people who with white collar professions, intellectual professions, may be in some ways replaced and employed, and so this can really lead to social unrest. I mean, some people are like, yeah, AI is like the advent of cars. So it's wiping jobs in the horse industry, but it's creating many new jobs with repair and creating roads and so on.
What do you think about
I think I'm not sure it's the same here. We're seeing many jobs wiped with AI that may not lead to replacement. I mean, I have some simple examples. I mean, I was recently in San Francisco, and many people prefer to use Waymos, which are like the self-driving cars by Google.
There are already
Oh, I mean, there are like
self-driving.
hundreds of thousands. I mean, in most major cities in the US, you have more and more cars by Waymos and other competitors. And it's usually more expensive than Uber with a driver, but people prefer to pay more to use Waymos because they don't want the human element. They're just like, just take me somewhere. I don't want to chat with someone. I don't want to just, and so many taxi drivers' jobs are being replaced. These folks, I don't know where they're going to find work, or like, let's say Amazon, that they have just recently declared that they want to lay off 500,000 people in their factories, like in their warehouses in the coming years, to be replaced by robots. These people who are low qualification, lowly qualified, I'm not quite sure what they can do next. And it's the same with white collar jobs. Even Amazon, Google, Meta, they're now laying off thousands of people with like computer science degrees from the best universities. And these people are now struggling to find jobs back in the industry, even though they're very qualified. And so I think we have to be ready for a major shift for intellectual jobs. I think in France, France, I think France is always behind, and things are again getting more slowly. So, but we're seeing trends in the more forward-looking countries, like in the US. So I think we have to get ready to have a major shift in our industry with many very smart and educated people without jobs. So this is one trend. Another trend I see is that AI is becoming so good at image and video generation that it's becoming almost impossible to distinguish the two. So today, experts can sometimes distinguish between the two, but even today, like I've seen recently a study. They were showing videos and photos to people who are supposed to be experts, and telling them, okay, which one is AI generated, which one is not. And today, even experts are not able to tell every time which ones are AI generated or not. So this is going to have a massive consequence for media and like believability. How can you believe something on video or photo? Another trend that I see is that people who are proficient with these AI tools are going to be much more productive and efficient than those who don't. So, so I think for a few years, many jobs are going to remain, but it's not like humans are going to be replaced by AIs. It's more like humans who don't use AI are going to be replaced by humans who use AI, who are going to be so much more productive. It's a bit like, imagine a war between humans and cyborgs, with like augmented muscles and whatever. I mean, humans have no chance. I think it's the same. It's the same here. So yeah. And another trend I'm seeing is that as these AI models become better and better, they will also contribute more and more to frontier research directly. So last year, for the first time ever, the chemistry Nobel Prize was awarded to a guy called Demis Hassabis. He was the founder of DeepMind, which was bought by Google. And so he created a model which is able to create new proteins for therapeutic purposes. And so for the first time ever, the chemistry Nobel Prize was given to a computer scientist. And so I think, yeah, we're going to see more and more innovations driven by AI models in all kinds of fields. Or even like recently, we saw that Google's AI models for weather forecasting are getting better than the best weather forecasting models ever made. So like these AI models are going to become just ubiquitous.
Wow. I need to travel more often, Sam, because I feel that I'm a bit behind, staying here in Europe. I'm a European at heart, but we are at least 10 years behind, right? What's happening in the US?
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, note to myself.
At least good to SF in New York, like these forward-looking cities. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for these really interesting trends. And this last example of the chemistry Nobel Prize,
Yeah,
which is a computer scientist. I mean, it shows us that, yeah, we're gonna be able to do so many things
yeah.
thanks to AI. It also has a lot of
Oh,
opportunities
yes.
for us, right? We talked a lot about risks. What are the opportunities that you see for us humans, but also for, students
Yeah.
and learners with AI?
Yeah, so I think maybe one of the promises of these technologies is that they're gonna do the more tedious work for us. And so in theory, it could enable us to do more of the creative and planning kind of work. But I mean, this remains to be seen how it pans out in the industry. But to talk specifically about education, I think that we have a strong potential to have these AI models work as tutors, as personal tutors, and fully convinced that it's much more efficient to learn with a personalized approach. I mean, for instance, at some point I went to learn Chinese when I was younger. I took a few weeks, months to watch videos, read books, but my progress was very slow. And then I went to China and had a personal tutor, and in a few weeks I made much more progress than in months of like doing some work which was not personalized. I think that like the modern classroom kind of follows a very kind of industrial approach, like these cohort of students of the same age, giving the same lectures, regardless of their levels, regardless of their learning style, and so on. I think with AI, we can imagine each student having multiple tutors who are personalized to them, their levels, their learning style, and so on. There's a guy called Andres Karpathy, who's worth following in the AI space. Well, he was the head of self-driving at Tesla, and then he was one of the creators of ChatGPT at OpenAI. And he left OpenAI to build a company called Eureka Labs, and his goal is to build a tutor that will teach people AI skills, and in a very, very personalized way. And his goal is to show that it's possible with this AI thing, and then to use the same approach for geometry and history and chemistry and whatever. And currently, the technology is not quite there yet. Like I still haven't seen like an AI tutor, which is very impressive, and there's still some issues like hallucinations, but it's getting better every month, every 6 months. So with the pace of progress in a few years, I'm pretty sure that we'll have to completely rethink how education is made.
Hmm.
But I mean, I know that the changes in our society are pretty slow, but we have to adapt. Yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, if you have something on Eureka Labs, or I don't know, a podcast that this guy has done
yeah,
that we could put in the show
yeah.
notes, that
Sure,
would be
sure.
amazing,
Yeah,
because it's very interesting to have someone like him
yeah.
work in education and learning.
Oh yes.
Learning about AI is a critical skill for today. So yeah, I'd love to share it with our followers. Um, and so, what do you see as the biggest risks, the biggest limitations that many people might not yet fully grasp? Because we are not techies. The listeners of this podcast, some of them are not techies. What should we know?
Yeah, so I think one thing that, and one of the main issues is that these AI systems are able to generate work artifacts which look extremely solid and well researched, but are actually completely misleading. Like a few months ago, OpenAI released something called Deep Research. Many other companies did something similar. You give it like a subject, like I don't know, I want to understand the evolution of the French economy during the Second World War, or whatever, and then it would spend maybe 2 hours doing all this research and like scraping the internet and give back like a 40-page PDF, fully well designed. It looks very professional. Until you're like, oh, it just looks so good. It must be true, right? If you ask such a question to deep research on a topic on which you're an expert, and you read in detail the reports, you're going to see that there are many things which are out of date, which are inaccurate, which are coming from bad sources. There's a company called Kurzgesagt which is like an educational, they make educational videos on YouTube, very high quality. And they have like a team of many, many researchers doing like deep research to make sure that everything is factual. And when these AI systems came out, they wanted to use them to see how good they were. And so on a new video, they used a deep research response, and it just looked so good that they started building their video on it. And then they realized that there were many things which were completely false. For instance, some things were said, and they're like, but what is the source of that? They would find the source, which is like an obscure article on a site that has no quote, no source, and they realized that many other sites are taking this as a factual point, which is not. And then they started to see many videos on YouTube on the same subject where people would just say this, which was completely made up in a single article without any source. So I think we have to be very careful because these models are so good at pretending to be accurate, right? There's another example of lawyers who used AI models, which then hallucinated cases, right? And so
Wow.
and so it just looked so credible that they used them without double checking all of them. Or also like there was like a case with McKinsey consultants with like giving like reports to customers, which again, for a few months or for a few weeks they were like, oh, this is good. And then when they started really looking into the details, they would find links pointing to nowhere or made up quotes, for instance.
My God.
Yeah. So we have to be aware that it's not because these models sound smart that they are necessarily factual and accurate.
But that's also a bit of a contradiction with what you were saying earlier about the fact that white collar jobs are getting more and more, replaceable. Or were you saying this about the future? I mean, we see that currently we're not there yet, right? From what you're saying. So how many years do you predict we'll be able to really trust the work of an AI?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it's forecasting is so hard in this space. Even like the world experts don't agree on the timelines. But I think we have more like so at first these models. So when a model is trained, it's then fully fixed, right? For instance, when we say GPT-4, it's like something that doesn't move. It has been trained. It has a cutoff date in its training, and it doesn't know anything about what comes after it. And so
it doesn't evolve
it
with
doesn't
us
evolve. No,
chatting
no.
right now? Okay.
So even in ChatGPT, they released a feature called memory.
Yeah.
It seemed that as if the model starts to get to know you. Everything it does is that whenever you have a chat with it, it creates a small entry saying, oh, Svenia likes flowers and she's using her bike to ride around Paris, right? And then when you make a new query to ChatGPT, it feeds this to the context saying, oh, by the way, this is what we know about Svenia. And so you get the feeling that the model knows you, but it's just a hack. The actual model doesn't, it's like immutable, right? It doesn't learn. It doesn't learn from its experience and so on. It's stateless. Every new discussion with GPT-4 is completely new for the model.
Yeah, but they're using that to build GPT-5,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. But also another thing that's come the past few months is that these models now have access to tools. For instance, web search. So they are able to, they can call Wikipedia. And so they are able to ground their responses in more live data. And so the web search is only an example of tool, but they have plenty of, so all the other software companies are now creating tools for AI models to call. For instance, like you can have, for instance, Booking, which gives a tool to book hotels and flights. You can have, Zillow, which allows to buy houses in the US, or Google Maps, which directly integrates maps in the response. And so now we have these AI models which are able to get information in the world, live information, and also act on the world. For instance, book a flight, book a restaurant, change a reservation. And so
that's what we call agents, right?
Yes. So it's, the fact that the model can act more autonomously, knowing the tools it has access to get information and act in the world. I think it's what we call agents. And so since these models can have access to that, they can also be better at grounding their information, right? So if you have GPT-4 without access to any tool, oh, tell me about this event which happened. It's not sure if it knows or not, but it's going to try to give you an answer. And if you ask, for instance, GPT-4, oh, do you know about this singer, like this French singer, which is not very famous? Like maybe he has just seen some of it in his training data. It will give you something very fuzzy with some inaccuracies and so on. But if it has access to web search, it can go on Google, it can go on Wikipedia and so on, and give you something much more factual.
Yeah.
But still, even then, like these tools, for instance, like deep research, even then, they have access to internet and so on. And even then, when you give a report to an expert, there's so many inaccuracies. But some experts are saying that having the AI doing this initial deep research for them is actually saving them a lot of time. It's replacing the work from their assistant or their intern, like going through to the library and finding all the references. And so it's still economically valuable work, but we still need behind an expert, a human expert saying, okay, I validate this report. For instance, the McKinsey consultant can be like, oh, the AI has generated the report. I just give this to the customer. A human with expertise in a given domain and so on has to double check and be like, okay, now my name is on it and you can trust it, right?
Absolutely.
And if there's a mistake, I'm responsible, not the AI.
That's what is expected from at least from McKinsey consultants.
I mean, even like we had an issue. There was a study in the Harvard Business Review recently. There are many more workers in the enterprise who are using these AI models to generate stuff as if it were from them, and just like sending them to colleagues, like, oh, I have made the slides for the presentation tomorrow, which was just made by an AI, and then they didn't spend that much time double checking. And so what happens is that you have a lot of colleagues who are angry because they have to double check work done by their colleagues, which actually was made by an AI in the first place and not double checked by a human. And I have the same issue in my software engineering job because we always review the work from others before merging in production, right? When you write like a code, you have like a code change, maybe with like 500 lines change. If the AI does most of it and you're not careful to double check, your colleague is going to review. If the colleague is careful, they're going to maybe see some weird stuff and be like, hey, why did you do that? And if you say, well, sorry, it was just the AI, they start to get pissed at you. So we are still always responsible for all the work we ship. So we should never fully rely on an AI unless for some very basic tasks. Yeah. But so today, will you trust an AI to book a flight for you?
No.
So,
I'm too much of a control freak.
No. I'm saying that you hear some people say, oh, all the jobs are going to be replaced and so on. Maybe, but today I don't know anyone who's going to trust an AI to like book a $1,000 flight before double checking for sure it's the right company, the right time, and so on. So we're not there yet, right? In terms of trust.
Clearly not.
And
Clearly not.
And like white collar job is mostly the delegation of trust, right? If you can't trust something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's hard to predict. You said it's hard to put a timeline on, future developments of AI.
I mean, when as I said, like most experts don't agree on the timelines. And like, like in the industry, people talk about AGI. It's like artificial general intelligence. It's when an AI system is able to do most economical tasks done by humans. And the definition is a bit fuzzy, but all the experts have different timelines. So people are like, oh, 2030, 2040, 2050, 2100. Sorry, 2100.
It's so hard to predict. Why is it so hard to predict?
I think there are so many factors which are not predictable. I mean, for instance, I can give you an example. A year ago, all the leading labs were from the US, right? And the competition was like, oh, Google is releasing a new model, which is the best. Oh, now it's OpenAI. Oh, now it's Anthropic and whatever. A year ago, Chinese labs with less budget and so on started to release open source, open weight models. When I say open source, is that the weights of the model, the parameters, they are shared publicly. And even the way they train them are shared publicly. And these Chinese labs started to catch up with the US labs very fast with much less budget. These people are hardcore and relentless. Like they work like 9 they call it 996, 9 to 9, 6 days a week. Sometimes in China it's even more hardcore. And last week there was a milestone. There's a Chinese company which released, I think it's called Kimi K2. They released a model, an open weight model, which is at the same level, even higher than the leading models from the US frontier labs, at a fraction of the cost. So, and nobody saw this coming. Nobody saw it coming in the industry. So this is just one example of how this space is completely unpredictable. You can have some breakthrough, which actually in 2 months leads to like years of progress. So there are so many labs all over the world with like billions of dollars of funding, tinkering with this all the time. that it creates a very unpredictable environment in terms of innovation.
It's a race. It's a real
Oh,
race.
it's a race. Yes, it's almost like an arms race, right? It's like Project Manhattan. I mean, it's like what happens if the Nazi gets the nuclear bomb first? Sorry. Right. Yeah. And so like you have some AI researchers who are calling nations and labs to stop research and be like, this is too dangerous. We are opening up Pandora's box. We're gonna all get killed, you know. But what happens when if the US if the US says, okay, let's stop research because it's too dangerous, and China like builds its crazy intelligent models, they will end up ruling the world. So in some ways, because of this prisoner's dilemma, it's impossible for a given nation or a block of alliance to stop research. And so there is this arm race of like spending more and more billions building bigger data centers with like crazy expensive GPUs. That's why NVIDIA is worth $5 trillion, is because they're like buying so many GPUs. So GPUs is like the graphical processor units in which we train these models, and
it's a physical.
Oh yes. At first they were created for like they were like for graphic cards to make like matrices calculation to render things on computers, and then they were also used for blockchain and so on. But yeah, it's just like physical devices able to do complex mathematical calculations extremely fast. So
and
yeah.
NVIDIA is
building
them.
NVIDIA is now the most valuable company in the world with like a market cap of 5 trillion, which is actually insane. Yeah.
What do you think? Some people are saying that it's a huge bubble,
yeah.
right? And pouring so much money into something that doesn't, I mean, you know, that, I mean, yes, they make money, but compared to what is getting poured into these labs, I mean, what do you think? And second question related, what about the impact, the ecological and environmental impact of all these data centers and all this processing power?
So it's so the question about the bubble is that I'm myself ambivalent because so many of these so the huge GAFAM, the FANG companies like Google, Meta, Apple, and so on, they have billions and billions of cash that they've saved over the years. And if they give them back to the shareholders and so on, they would have to pay more taxes on it. So they have to invest it. And so they are spending billions and billions of dollars on this. And many of their leaders said, the cost for us to invest on this, and it turns out being a bubble, is less than the cost of not investing. And then it turns out that another company builds AGI. So there's a true FOMO here, the fear of missing out. It's like Google is like, oh, if we don't do this and OpenAI does it, we're going to be screwed. So there is some fear driving this. And the truth is that if a company finds somehow the secret sauce, whatever, the big model that's going to replace so many white-collar jobs and so on, it could become like it could become a company that is valued 10 trillion, 20 trillion in a few years. But it's a huge bet. It's a huge gamble. And truth is, I mean, the current investments are predicated on the idea that such an AGI moment is coming, but it's not clear that it's going to happen. And if it doesn't happen, and there are huge chances that this doesn't happen, there's a huge bubble that's going to burst. And I mean, even like, so something very actual, very current. This week there was OpenAI, which asked the U.S. government to bail them out in case they end up unable to pay their debts if it turns out that their investment don't pay out. Because so OpenAI is like is raising like billions and billions of dollars. And sure, they're making 20 billion, 30 billion a year, but it's nothing compared to what they are loaning and so on. And so when we have OpenAI asking the government to bail them out, so they want to, they want to make the profit private and the losses shared by the people. They themselves realize that there's a fear of this bubble popping. And when this bubble pop is going to be pretty hardcore for the industry in terms of job loss and so on. But when you looked at previous bubbles like the dot-com bubble, 1999, 2000, of course, most companies which were part of the bubble exploded. Like any company which added a .com to their name, like pet.com, like was valued millions and millions just for that. So many of these companies got destroyed, but a few of them from this .com era Google and Amazon and so on, what the kind of rose through the ashes of that became the major companies of today, right? If you look at the most valuable companies of today, like 20 most valuable companies in the world, most of them are just tech companies, right? With like digital assets. And so a very likely scenario is that this current bubble is going to explode somehow. It's going to be very, very, there's going to be a bloodbath in the industry. But from the ashes, a few very, very valuable companies are going to be able to apply these current AI findings all over the industry over the years. Like even if AI research stops right now, we would still have decades of years of finding ways to apply the current innovations to the industry at large.
Mm.
So I think maybe the expectations are a bit inflated, but there is real economic value to be gained from these models that's not yet fully explored. Yeah, there's a question of like, are the expectations too high? I think they may be, but they may not be, like there's maybe a 10% chance that something related to AGI turns out that if a company finds that, which just changes everything. So yeah, I think nobody knows. If someone tells you they know, well, I mean, if they know it, they should like bet on it in the stock market, because they could become trillionaires, right? I mean,
and what about the ecological
yeah,
and environmental impact?
it's a complete disaster. I mean, so all these labs are creating huge data centers. So just like they're buying like huge lands and just putting like racks and racks of GPUs and so on, uh, astronomical costs. So there is, of course, the cost of energy, like giga and gigawatts. I mean, some of these companies are also investing in nuclear reactors, right? They're using nuclear energy privately owned by companies just to power their data centers. But also like for the materials, to build GPUs and servers and so on, you need rare earth materials, which are extracted in places in the world, in war zones, in places where local, it's destroying communities, it's destroying forests. It's like, it's a complete mess. And there's a huge disconnect between people in suits in Silicon Valley, in New York, like negotiating these things, and people on the ground losing their land and getting pollution and people getting cancers. And so it's an ecological disaster. And one of the ways these AI leaders justify this, they say, oh, but we're going to create AI systems which are so good that they will create abundance for humanity. And so this is just maybe the cost of, it's like people are kind of casualties of the path to progress. Well, that's easy to say, right? When you are in a skyscraper in SF or New York.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. This is fascinating, Sam. Thank you so much for all these insights. You know so much. That's why I wanted to ask you all these questions about AI, the latest advancements, and what we will see happen in the next few years. And now I'd love to ask you some questions around parenting in the age of AI, education, because it's the topic of our podcast.
Sure.
And so I would love to know, for parents, educators who are listening to us, how should they think about AI's capabilities versus hype, and what can we say to them? How can they think about it in terms of opportunities, capabilities versus all the noise, basically? How to cut through the noise?
Yeah, I mean, I think every educator needs to be hands-on, needs to use AI models. I mean, parents and educators. The best way to get an intuition for what these models and AI tools and agents can do is to actually use them every day. So I know that some people don't like technology, don't like AI, whatever. I think regardless of your values, I think educators today have a moral imperative. I would say it's a strong word, I know, but I would say to be deeply acquainted with this space, because it's going to affect everything, right? It's like, I mean, it's just an analogy, but it's not perfect. But imagine 20 years ago, someone said, no, I will never use Google search. I'm against that. I'm going to go to the library, sift through stuff. I mean, I just imagine someone who refuses to use Google search for their education or for educating their kids or students. So I think people cannot overlook that. And so yeah, of course, it takes a lot of time to do that on top of keeping up to date with a given domain of expertise or a subject, right? But I think, yeah, each educator or parent has to know for themselves, okay, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of these things, and how can I adapt this to my very specific situation with my kids or my students. I think there is no one size fits all answer. And also, these things are evolving so fast. One has to really stay connected to the innovations regularly. Yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean by moral imperative because the students, your kids are using it. So
Yes.
if you're not up to date, if you're not
Yeah.
curious,
Yeah.
at least curious to
Yeah.
get acquainted with
Yeah.
these tools, how can you guide
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
students through this world, right? And most of them use it already.
Yes.
Most of them do their homeworks with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you really need that. And if we talk about parenting specifically, you're a father of 4,
Yeah.
very dedicated to your fatherhood and to raising your kids. How do you prepare them for this world? Like, what do you teach them? How do you prepare them for a world that will be more and more AI driven?
So I think the way I prepare my kids, since it's so hard to predict the future and to know which specific skills are going to be useful in 10 years, 20 years, and so on, I think the best way for me to train them is to make sure that they become well-rounded as human beings and also well-rounded as students. So I believe that there are some fundamental skills like language, French, English, whatever, maths, physics, and so on, which are going to be foundational no matter what. Logic. So I want my kids to become good at these general skills so that they can easily adapt to a changing world. So I feel like instead of teaching them of course, kids have to know base facts, and the more facts they know, the better they can navigate. But I want to, most importantly, teach them how to learn fast and how to adapt. So that's why I'm also teaching them programming. I mean, it doesn't matter if programming is going to be useful in 20 years. For me, when they're learning programming, they're learning how to think programmatically, and they're learning these skills of learning how to learn programming.
Absolutely.
And so for me, this meta skill of learning how to learn programming is more important than the actual programming itself. Like, for instance, my older daughter, Alice, she really likes programming. I mean, there are very good chances that she will never have to program for a living, but I don't care. I mean, I think it's making her a more well-rounded person, and it will open her possibilities and options, I think.
Yeah, because the skills that you learn through learning how to program is, being analytical and having, a mind that understands, all the blocks, and you teach them with Scratch, right?
Oh, I mean, so there's a visual language created by, I think, my MIT, which is called Scratch. Actually, like the introductory course for programming at Harvard is called CS50. The first class is on Scratch to show them actually you can do a lot of things, create games and so on. And once they master Scratch, they move on to other languages. Alice is also using a language called Python. It's a language. It's very, very accessible. It really sounds like English when you read it. But Scratch was a good way for her to then move on to Python. The main difference between Scratch and Python is just the way it presents itself, right? Scratch, you move blocks and with colors around, but the logic behind is the same, about conditionals, if this, then that, or loops and so on. So once they master the basic concept in Scratch, then using programming language is not that complicated.
Would you recommend to parents who are non-technical, who don't have your type of job to teach programming through Scratch, even if they don't know it themselves?
So forward-looking schools. So my daughter is in a private school, and she's in the cinquième now.
Yeah.
So it's seventh grade.
Seventh grade.
And they are starting to use Scratch in her class. So even the parents who are not techies, they have their kids being initiated to that. But my daughter, I think she started doing this when she was like 5 or 6, which gives her a head start. I would say that it's harder to teach your kids if you don't know it yourself. Even like Scratch, if you're not technical at all, it can be pretty intimidating. But even I'm living in Paris. Even in Paris, there's a lot of like clubs where you can send them for a week I've done that with some of my kids, send them for a week training camp Like they just created games using Scratch for a week. So even if the parent is not technical, they can send them
Mhm.
to different classes or camps
Yeah.
where kids can learn that. And actually, kids love it. It's
Mhm. It's fun, it's
yeah.
engaging, it's
Oh
gamified,
yes, yes, yes.
it's
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And how do you talk to them about AI? Like, are they starting to use it? I know your kids are quite young, but are they starting to use it? And how do you talk about AI with them?
Yeah. So for me, it's very important for them to be critical users of it. So I don't want to. So that there are two extremes. One extreme is like, oh no, it's bad. I'm going to completely shield them from it. But then when they encounter it, because they will sooner or later, they're going to be
Absolutely.
lost. And the other extreme is just, oh, just give it to them and they're going to figure it out. But they don't necessarily have the tools. So the best way for me is to give them access to it and then kind of watch them use it and see like the questions they ask. For instance, my daughter Alice, she had some a paper to do on like some Greek mythology stuff, and she just asked ChatGPT, and then she just copied and pasted, and she did it once last year. Um, and actually, ChatGPT hallucinated some facts. So hallucination is like LLMs don't necessarily know what they don't know. So if there's like an obscure event of a obscure mythological event, they may invent or not be precise. And so the teacher asked Elise, "Where did you get that from?" And she bluffed and she was like, "Oh." She didn't say, well, I just copied and pasted from ChatGPT. So the teacher said in the teacher-parent reunion meeting, he said, your kids are allowed to use AI models, but they always have to cite their sources. And so I'm teaching my kids to also judge if a source is good or not. For instance, Wikipedia, it's a pretty reliable source in most subjects. If it's like a random site that you've never heard of with a lot of ads, maybe, think twice. So I'm teaching my kids to like critical thinking, always go to the sources. And it's good that they are aware of the hallucinations. So at some point, my daughter, like there was she wanted to know the lyrics of a given song, and I think that we didn't find on Google for some reason because it wasn't a famous enough songs. And so we asked ChatGPT, and actually it didn't know, but it hallucinated it. And so we listened to the song. And we tried to sing along, which was like that is wrong. But the AI model sounds so confident. It says, "Of course, here are the words for this song," and so it's good that to have kids who are like, they know that AI, these models are not accurate. You just can't blindly trust them because I still have adults today, adults who are like very educated, very smart, like some of the smartest people I know. And sometimes they just say, oh, ChatGPT said it. It's like,
What?
no. Sometimes they just trust the ChatGPT response.
Wow.
Like they ask some medical question or history question, or whatever. And sometimes I'm like, um, I mean, some very, very smart people have done this. I'm like, it's you know that these models can be wrong, right? It's not because they sound confident that it's true. So even adults today can get tricked by that. So yeah, so I just want my kids to use them, and see by themselves where these models are bad. But another maybe more funny anecdote. So my kids like when I invent stories for them. So sometimes they give me like, oh, here are some words that you need to use in this setting.
Love
And
it.
but I can only do this when I'm fully present and I'm not like doing something that's when I'm cooking or driving at the same time. It's pretty hard. So sometimes I'm just asking ChatGPT to like I'm like, oh, write a story about this with these words and so on, and they like it. But the interesting thing is that they often tell me fondly, "Oh, we prefer when you do it." And like ChatGPT can write better stories, I think than I can. But they just love that it comes from me
Absolutely.
because they see it as an act of love. And so I think in this age of AI, taking the time to do humanly what could be done by an AI, even if it's maybe less well done, can be a true act of love. So
Mm.
yeah, so
Oh.
my daughter Ice, she's releasing a collection of poems, and so we tried to do something very professional, but for the cover we use an AI generated model to make the cover, and it looks nice. But a friend of mine asked, but why did you ask an AI to do it? Why you could have asked her to do a drawing, or ask a friend, and it might have looked less nice maybe, but at least it would have been fully human made. And now thinking about it, maybe it would have been more meaningful to have everything human-made in the book, even the cover. So I think for our next book or our next edition, we may think about doing something maybe less, maybe just different, but using human skills. Yeah.
What are the skills that we need to teach our kids? We, as educators, our parents, what are the top skills we teach our kids? You said critical thinking, you said metacognition, learning how to learn. You have other, because we don't know the jobs that they will do in 15 years, 10 years, 15 years time, even 5 years time. So what should we teach them?
So I think we can't teach curiosity, but it's the more, I think today, like, we have access to all the knowledge in the world in our pocket, in a computer. We have access to like LLM models who know so much. So we have all these things accessible to us. I think that the scarce resource is our attention, is our curiosity. And so we can't teach curiosity, but I think we have to find ways
to spark it, because it's in us.
It's in us, yeah. So in the environment, like bringing them to museums, bringing them to tech shows, sending them to camps where they learn programming, and you have to, make sure that their curiosity is fed, create the right environment. But I would say, maybe I'm a bit old school on that, but and this is the stance of like, that's what the private school my older daughter goes to, is that all the fundamental skills, like being very good in history, geography, and math, and physics, and chemistry, and so on, are going to be very relevant. And sometimes my daughter Alice asks me, how can I best prepare? I would like to save the planet. I would like to do something for the world, like Greta Thunberg style. And sometimes I tell her, I think the best thing you could do right now is to prepare yourself as a human being, get skills, become good at be good at school, to have more options for your studies later. Because maybe you're gonna do some work in politics to change opinions or communication. Maybe you can do some work in sciences and find innovations, maybe to help the world. But the best way to do that is to be fully prepared and have the skills for that. So I think I'm pretty old school with my kids. And what's interesting is that most parents from the senior leaders of these tech companies in Silicon Valley have their kids in low-tech schools like Waldorf and Montessori, so on. They don't even want their kids to have smartphones and iPads in their home. I mean, just think about it. The people who create Facebook, Instagram, and so on don't want this shit into their kids' hands, because they want them to. Sorry, I used the word shit. They don't want this into their kids' hands because they know how it can screw them up with their attention. And so I also want this same kind of low-tech education for my kids. I believe that if they are very good at math and languages and so on, they're going to be able to learn whatever comes next.
But your kids and their kids are very privileged.
Yes.
And I think that when you have these privileged kids, getting them access to tools that can help them learn. I'm not saying playing video games all day or but really, or being on TikTok or Instagram, but I'm talking about amazing tools, educational tools that exist today, that are built by education technology entrepreneurs, that are building tools to help you learn how to read, how to write, how to, and I think these tools can have a big impact on learners, especially those who don't have the private tutors, who don't have access to the best private schools. But so I'm always a bit worry about this argument of tech leaders don't want these tools in the hands of their kids. It's a double-edged sword. It means that yes, you can have these tools, they can do harm if your kid stays for hours on TikTok, but it can also do a lot of good if they're used in a smart, meaningful way. And I'm a big ambassador of using tools in an educational and way to help you learn and to help you grow. But it has to be meaningful.
Yeah, but like even the sad thing is that, for instance, if you take in the internet, there is a company called Khan Academy. So for 1 year, we homeschooled one of our kids for some reasons, and we used Khan Academy for some of the maths lessons, and they're also integrating AI into their curricula. So you have videos, and then you have quizzes, then you have an AI tutor, and so on. It's getting better and better. The thing is that even these sites, which are completely free, Khan Academy is like funded by philanthropists and so on. So it's completely free. It's world-class lessons, world-class teachers. The thing is that you still need parents or educators to put kids in front of it, to show it to them, and you still need a human behind to say, okay, how is it going? Are you motivated? Oh, is it too hard, too easy? You always need a human to help the kid connect the technology with their own life. And the problem is that it's mostly educated parents, already rich parents, who are giving their kids cannabis and stuff like that. Because like parents who are underprivileged, they don't even know that cannabis exists, you know? So I think that we have some major issues here on how to make sure that teachers of less privileged kids have access to the best tools. I think it's a very political issue as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because I see, for instance, like so one reason I put my oldest daughter in a private school is because that at that level in the public sector, even if I live in Paris, in a nice district, the level is pretty low. And so I put her in this private school because the level is better. And I know it's unfair, but I didn't feel like putting my daughter in this lower level public school. So yeah, I would love to live in a country where the public schools are better than the private schools, and some countries are able to do it.
Absolutely.
And so
Finland, for
in
example.
these cases, the private schools even disappear, right?
Yeah.
But you need to have a very strong social contract
Yeah.
and the finances and so on. And yeah, it's a complicated topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. What would be your last advice or message that you would like to share to our listeners? And my second question, so you have a bit of time to think about it, is who would be for you the next ideal guest for this podcast? So someone who you know, who works in AI, typically, for example, or who works in AI and education or learning, or who could be a good guest for our podcast. I know you haven't prepared that question. I'm sorry, Sam. But it could be, anyone you think of, or even someone you don't know, actually, but that someone that you're following that could have an interesting point of view on the topic of AI and the future of the economy, not specifically linked to education, because I'm interested in having lots of different voices on that podcast. As you know, it's an interdisciplinary podcast. So yeah, that's my very last question that I ask any of my guests.
All
so
right.
first, you can give us some last words, some last thinking around that topic, and then you can share the guest that you would like to recommend.
Well, I think I may repeat something I've already said to our listeners. So whether you're a parent or an educator, I think the most important thing is to use and know these tools intimately yourself to get an intuition for them. Then second, I would say, depending on your work, think hard about your employment prospects. Because, if you're a parent, and you want to provide for your kids in the next 10, 20 years, right? And I'm thinking about this every day. How can I prepare? I see my industry shifting. Like I feel like I'm shifting sand, and so we have to be very nimble. It's not a time of just resting on our laurels. So I would really urge all listeners to think hard about making sure that they can stay employable and creating values in our economy in the coming years and decades. And so I think it's better to be proactive now when you still have the choice than being forced to do it in a panic, right? Yeah. So I think, but I think, maybe it's a bit contradicting, but to say, but try to also have fun doing it. It's funny because today, like having a chat with an AI that sounds human feels normal now. Even for my kids, to have a chat with ChatGPT feels normal. But just like 5 years ago, this sounded like completely like science fiction. And so yeah, so I think try to rekindle your curious child mind. Absolutely. And see like, okay, what are the limitations of these models? And what does it teach us about intelligence and consciousness? We used to think that intelligence was a very human property, right? And now we can simulate these neural networks, which shows many properties which we thought were only for us humans, right? Yeah. What does it teach us about consciousness? What does it mean to be aware of being aware? Are these models conscious in some ways? Try to be curious about these things, because we are sometimes separating. my friend Riwa, she recently wrote an article sharing how, I mean, these models are running on chips made of sand, of silicon, and silicon is sand. So we are sometimes separating the natural world, beings, monkeys, whatever, and trees, and then the fake technological world. But wait, these models, these AI models are running on sand. They are part of the natural order. I mean, we have created them somehow, so we've helped nature in some ways, but they're not separated from us, right? So I don't know what the ramifications are for consciousness and so on, but
Such a beautiful topic.
yeah, I think we have to, and it's also interesting to discuss these things with kids, right? What do you think? Like these AIs, like, can they feel something? Can they? I mean, why and why not? I mean, how do we know, right? So I think it's just good to have kids also made aware of these questions, to which I don't think we have the answers yet.
We'll share Niwa's article in the podcast notes. Absolutely.
sure.
It was a beautiful read.
Yeah.
All right. And for the people that you recommend.
Okay, well, so I think you know her as well. I have a friend. She's called Marjolaine Grondin, I think.
Yeah.
And I see that she's very active in training people on how to use AI in the enterprise or freelancers and so on. And she's actually, like, some of her students, I think, some dramatic increase in productivity. And so they are able to do more with less time. They're also able to automate teachers' tasks to focus on the more interesting things. I think she would have a lot of things to say on how to prepare our kids.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think
Such a great idea.
I mean, the reason why I mentioned her is because I would definitely listen to this episode. If you are able to get her on the podcast, I think this could be extremely interesting. Yeah,
I'd love to
I mean,
have
she's
her.
been an early adopter and tinkerer for so many years. So it's it could be very interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sam, for being my guest, for sharing so openly about everything you know, everything you've learned about AI in the last few years, and for sharing about parenthood and being a parent in this age. So it was super interesting. I loved this episode. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for having me. It was a really great pleasure. Thank you, Svenia.
Thank you.